Now, it's time for the Anchormen podcast with Matt Gaetz and Dan Ball.
Welcome back to the Anchormen Show. I'm Matt Gaetz, host of the Matt Gaetz Show on One American News. You can watch that program on our weeknights, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 Pacific. We talk about everything going on in the news, politics, sports, and here we address the human condition and the state of the movement. And I am joined by two incredible ladies, moms, activists, just incredible folks, the Freedom Angels, Tara Thornton and Denise Aguilar. Thank you so much for joining me here. And I want to take just a moment. You've become towering figures in California activism on the right as people have become more awakened to the conditions that Gavin Newsom has visited on the Golden State. So we're going to go over the full indictment of that agenda, what it means going forward, this incredible election that we have coming up in a few days here in California. But really the essence of this episode, what I want to get to is what starts that fire in a duo of moms to say, I'm actually going to roll up my sleeves and get involved in organizing, in legislation. I'm going to show up for candidates who I think will fight for me. I'm going to encourage people going door to door, even in a place like this, where at times the victories are scant and the opposition is incredibly powerful. So I'd love to have you both just kind of share your origin story, where you're from, how you grew up, and what led you to become the Freedom Angels.
Absolutely. So I'm from Stockton, California. I never left my area. I was actually a gang member for most of my life until 2012. And in 2015, California decided it wanted to practice medicine and remove philosophical and religious belief exemptions for children for vaccines K through 12, public and private school. And at that time, I actually vaccinated my kids. I didn't know anything about the vaccine movement. I actually worked in a hospital. So I didn't know anything about this. All I knew was that there should be no type of medical mandates, and our government should not be telling us what we have to do in order to participate in something that we pay for through our tax dollars.
And we were just talking before we came on air about COVID becoming the point of awakening for so many Americans, that before COVID, there was this belief that the vaccines were good for us and that the people who questioned them, there must be something wrong with those folks. But what gang were you a member of?
Well, I was what they called Norteñas. I got jumped in when I was 12 years old and just in and out of the system. I never even thought about politics until I met my husband, who learned about politics while he was in prison. So we were both no idea what this even meant.
So prison politics is what led you to be an anti-vaxxer.
Yes. Yeah.
No, and
no,
I mean,
it really is. Because
helpful.
when your back's up against a wall, and there's nowhere to go, all you have to do is move forward and say, wait a minute, this isn't right? Like if there's something wrong, I am not scared, obviously, to say something. And I think a lot of people got really scared to say, like, hey, we need to start talking about this, right? Because then you're anti-vaxxers. But I think through COVID, people saw the lies of the pharmaceutical companies and how they were buying their way through our elected representatives. And it was so angering to me. I'm like, I'm not going to just sit there and not do anything about it. So I engaged. I started learning about politics. I started talking to legislators, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Awesome. Well, Tara, was it the vaccine issue as well that got you engaged and activated?
Actually, originally, I started on environmental and criminal justice issues when I was a teenager. I'm from New Hampshire. I moved to California when I was 20, and I ran far left extremist environmental and social justice groups. I was a big part of Earth First, and I just, ended up having a very alternative lifestyle. I lived off grid. I was into survivalism. And homeschooling early on. And I always knew that I was going to make sure that I kept all the toxins out of my life and any children I have. So when my child was born over 15 years ago, he was unvaxxed because I already knew. And I knew not to, this is important to say, I knew not to give him vaccines because I knew of the risks from the mothers who had given their children shots and they were severely injured.
Wow.
And it was because of those moms. It was these early online boards, Mothering and Yahoo, where these moms were desperately trying to find out how to recover their kids. And it was through that I realized like the bigger picture. So for me, I had left kind of the leftist activism stuff in my early 20s, and then as I became a mom with my child, he was 5 in 2015 when California brought the bill called SB 277. This is Senator Richard Pan, who's trying to grab one of those seats that Newsom's trying to redistrict with Prop 50. And this was the shot heard around the world on what everyone came to see in COVID. It started in 2015 in California with SB 277. They removed all exemptions for shots for school for kids. And it was that brought me in a way that nothing had ever moved me before. It was my kid. They came after my kid, and I don't co-parent with the government, and I certainly drew a line around our kids. They're sacred ground. You go after them, we're going to fight you. And so that's what brought us in on this in 2015.
When you were an organizer on the political left for environmental and social justice causes, who were some of your political heroes, the people you looked up to?
I really had I did not really understand, at that time I was fighting corporate interests, and at the time, the Democrats I thought were the good guys on it. I didn't really understand globalism. This was in the 80s. And early 90s. I didn't understand the globalists like I do. In fact, it was the vaccine issue in 2015 that really cracked open. When you start to fight to protect kids and against these public health control measures, it just rips all the veils down, and you really see this evil globalist agenda that has all of us against the wall, that is trying to commoditize everybody.
So people are going to watch this program. They're going to say, what was it that brought an environmental social justice activist together with a former gang member and prisoner to advocate for all these policy changes in California? Tell me the story of how the two of you teamed up.
It was in 2019 when we had SB 276. Again, this was going to remove all functional exemptions. The vaccine issue was the issue for us at the time. And we were, in hearings, we were trying to figure out how we were going to push against these politicians because they weren't talking to us. They would run away from us. It was such a bad experience for us. And there was just one moment that the bill passed committee, and I was so upset because I share custody of my middle son. And I knew at that moment I wouldn't be able to protect him anymore because I wouldn't have the ability to shield him from these decisions anymore. I was sobbing on the floor of the Capitol. Tara came over to me and we just met, and it was just like this capturing of souls almost. We were like, we're on the same mission, and we didn't know anything about each other. All we knew was that our kids were at the front lines of this fight. Right? Our children are always the ones on the front line, whether it be in public school, whether it be medical mandates. That is what brought us together. And I think for a lot of people, that is the common ground. We talk to a lot of people on different demographics, Democrat, Republican, all types of people. And the one thing that we have common ground on is children should be protected at all cost. And so for me, my life was always about fighting my own community like a dummy. I fell into the trap of, this is where I needed to be. I needed to be a gang member. I needed to sell drugs. I needed to do all these things. And the world of politics actually pretty much saved my life. I never thought I would actually live to this age. I missed so many different experiences as a young kid because this was the path of my life. And so when we engaged in politics, we were like, we have one common mission, and that is to protect the children of California and of the world, because this is a global issue. This isn't just a California issue. We saw that during COVID. It was vaccine mandates. If you didn't get vaccinated, you couldn't move around society. You couldn't go to work. You couldn't do the things. California actually tried to introduce a bill that would require you to show your QR code that you've been vaccinated. So this is what we knew. We know that we love our state. We know that we would do anything for our children. And so the breaking point for me was I made a decision. I'm going to leave this lifestyle and I'm going to completely go into politics, and I'm going to learn how to do this, and we're going to do this together.
Yeah. We jump you in too, I guess.
Yeah, I know.
In a way, by putting you into these positions with legislators and lawmakers.
The biggest gangsters out there.
And there really was, before COVID, a kind of a scarlet letter around parents who questioned vaccine orthodoxy. Mm-hmm. Were there ever any moments when you met with leaders in medicine or in government where you just really felt like they were degrading even reasonable questions and opinions and perspectives that you were bringing to them?
Oh, all the time. That was the
What's
status
the worst
quo.
meeting you had?
Well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to tell you something that no one knows. So back in 2017, before we formed Freedom Angels, I was one of 12 people at the highest meetings we'd ever had in the administration, Trump 1 administration, and it was with Jason Chaffetz when he was head of the Government Oversight Research Committee. And different people were talking about the CDC whistleblower, the 86 Act, Fauci. So this is March of 2017, talking about Fauci and the coming pandemic. All the injury rates, all the different things. And my part was speaking on vaccine mandates at the state and the federal government. And I was trying to tell Chaffetz that not only were they after our kids, but they were looking for a global lockdown, and they were going to go after adults and try to require us for participation in society, work, travel, everything. He actually laughed at me. He was like, they will never do that. I'm like, it is coming.
I would have laughed at you too, though.
I know, everyone would have. And they vilified us for a reason. I will tell you, though, you can't shame a mom who is out to protect her kid. So, they tried, and they did a good job for a long time making it taboo to be an anti-vaxxer or to question vaccines. But I know that when we formed Freedom Angels in 2019, when we were running legislative strategy, we were just losing. Like you said, no one would take you seriously. You literally hand them all the facts, everything. You show them no double-blind placebo safety testing. You show them no liability. You show them injury. You show them the human suffering. And they're like, yeah, sorry, we don't, they just literally disregard it. So the final day of legislative session, we had no other play. It was a suspense file hearing. It's the last hearing, and they have to get all 2,000 bills out, and it's kind of like an auction. They just run it off. And we had you don't get to interface. So as opposition, we didn't have a way to interface. But we made the decision to start peaceful civil disobedience, because we knew we were at the point. We'd done everything for years. We've worked every legislative angle, and we're like, we have to show them this is a real human and civil rights issue, and that Newsom is going to be the next George Wallace if he passes SB 276 and blocks our kids from school for having no exemptions, because it's that serious. This is human and civil rights. These are our kids, and we're not going to stand down, and he's on the wrong side of history. We had, mayors were like, you are going to crawl on the backs of the injured and the children of this state to get to be president, to try to be president. So we stood up on chairs in the final hearing, and we stood in a red, white, and blue dress, American flag upside down, which is a sign for nation in distress. And we said, you have not represented California for all. These are our kids. We're not going away.
What did they do to you?
Well, we thought they were going to arrest us.
Well, you're familiar with that. You should. That didn't scare you at all.
Arrest us. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're a Nobel
I have
state,
no
baby.
fear of going back to prison.
Like your policies created Nobel state. Take me.
Yeah. Well, and that must be frustrating when you come to these meetings with seriousness and passion and drive, and the policymakers that you're speaking with don't seem to care. That must feel demoralizing. And the exact opposite of that must have been how you felt when RFK Jr. was selected HHS secretary. The two of you were very familiar with his work well before he became the political sensation that he is today. Tell us about the RFK Jr. you know, and what you think he's bringing to this really important work.
We are so thankful that he has never backed down from this conversation and this fight. We worked with him at the Capitol talking to legislators. It was so hard just to get the legislators to meet with him. And what he's done now is what he promised us that he would do. And that is really start reforming the system. We saw that with ACIP when he changed out the members. Every single member who tries to push these vaccines has money invested
so
in
much
it.
Self-dealing.
It's so much.
Self-dealing over the decisions about what goes into the bodies of young children with their cells divided.
Yeah, it's incredible that we would question all of these different vaccines, all of the doses, the mandates. Like, we're the crazy ones. When we were fighting 276 and we were inside the Capitol, we had our kids lined up, tons of kids. We had thousands of people at the Capitol. And we had staffers pass by our kids and spit on them. They hated us. It wasn't even that they didn't take us seriously. It was they hated us. And they showed it. They had no problem showing that they hated us. We never...
what do you tell a child in that circumstance?
Well, it thankfully wasn't my kid, but, we...
Probably been cut. But I mean, a child doesn't understand
They
that.
don't understand that. And, when I would take my kid with me to the Capitol, he would always ask, like, why don't they want to talk to us? Like, why do they treat you like that? And in all of the things that we've done, I think for my kid, we've modeled what it looks like to be persistent. And even if they don't take you seriously, I take me seriously. And what we're talking about is about the health of our children, their well-being, their future, their ability to go into schools. Even though we don't support public schools for our kids, there's other kids that are there.
Yeah. Nobody wants public schools to be bad.
Right.
You just have to be a mean person. We want them to be good, even if it's
Right.
not the selection that's right for everyone. And you shouldn't bar people at the schoolhouse gate because of a decision they've made regarding their own medical freedom. And that was never about the safety of the children at that school. That was about the profitability of pharmaceutical companies, and it was about control. It was about showing that they could have control at that early stage. And I think Tara put it beautifully, that was really a stepping stone to the other features of the globalist agenda that they wanted to indoctrinate from literally a biomedical standpoint. And when all this is going on, did you start to see the light come on with everyone else during COVID, where you're like, we've been here, we've been warning you all about this?
We knew that if people knew what was going on, they're on our side. And COVID did definitely rip the veil off for people. I know that, with our kids, one of the things we've taught them when 2019, when we stood on those chairs, we'll go back for a second and say, I know it was true for both of us. When you stand up for what you believe in, against being vilified as the evil anti-vaxxers, I knew for me in that moment, no one could touch me. They couldn't silence me. They couldn't shame me. They could only arrest me. That's all they had. And in that, I feel so blessed that I get to walk around knowing what that feels like. And it gave us the ability for when COVID came, we ran all the lockdowns at the California Capitol, because we knew how important it was to get out ahead as fast as possible to try to say, no, this is an authoritarian move to take control of humanity. And when we went out, it was May 1st of 2020, was our second lockdown at the California Capitol protest, and we had 10,000 people there. And Newsom set it up as a trap for us with 650 CHP officers. And halfway through, it was peaceful. It was like a July 4th party. He made the call to send everybody out and arrest the Californians out there. So they arrested 32 of us. And, it was fighting for our kids and being the evil anti-vaxxers that allowed us to have the courage to stand up in that moment when the whole world was still scared on May 1 and say,
But wait, isn't Newsom warning the rest of the country about authoritarianism and monarchies and kings? You're saying dozens of people got arrested for a peaceful protest over medical freedom?
Yes, 32 of us. Now he had to drop the charges eventually because
you're here with me, not in the clink, and she's a repeat offender. So I figure you'd still be there. But I'm glad they dropped it. But do you think it was intimidation though?
Oh,
to the rest of the other people?
The only reason he dropped it was because of George Floyd protests. They let everybody 3 weeks later destroy the Capitol and riot, so they had no choice. But it was a very easy decision to stand there because this is the Capitol, the California Capitol is your state's highest public town square where your 1A right is most fervently protected. So it was very simple. When they told us to move or get arrested, it was, to support 1A, we just didn't move. And,
there you go.
And that.
You mentioned the immunities that these vaccine companies have. Mm-hmm. And this is what got me. When all of this was hitting the country, and Democrats wanted big outlays of money, and the administration was trying to not go into global economic meltdown. The one thing Mitch McConnell and a bunch of the corporatist Senate Republicans wanted for the COVID vaccine was immunity from prosecution. And I never got that because we have courts, they exist, where if someone is injured by something, they can seek redress and have that dispute adjudicated, and there's standards of care and there's case law and precedent. But they wanted a special lane of justice that actually was a bridge to nowhere for anyone who was injured by the vaccine. Mm-hmm. I believe that Republicans who supported that and demanded that should feel great shame in these moments.
They should feel shame. The 1986 Act gave pharmaceutical companies' shield of liability, right? So there's like a whole special court with a special masters where the person who got injured has to prove that they are the ones who got injured. It's a circus. What Gavin has actually done here in California is he pushed through one of the most extreme pieces of legislation, AB 144. Now, this creates California's own vaccine panel. So we have a federal vaccine panel. Now we have California's vaccine panel.
I bet every one of them has their pronouns in their email signature
I bet,
block.
right? Yeah. And he also extended immunity to the people who like host vaccine clinics, the schools, because the schools were vaccinating children against COVID without parental consent.
No.
Oh yeah, there was lawsuits on it. So now it looks like Gavin is shielding corporations and billionaires while throwing people of California under the bus and creating this shield of liability for pharmaceutical companies, the people who host the vaccine clinics, and possibly putting on other vaccines like the COVID shot, which he really wanted to do, including the HPV shot. So what we're seeing with Gavin is a complete pharmaceutical shill at this point. And the people of California...
Do you think the pharmaceutical companies will support him when he runs for president?
Oh, they already are supporting him. Yeah, AB 144, he ran that through on a trailer bill just at the same time that they were doing the 3-day push to shove Prop 50 onto the ballot against, without the voters' say of getting it actually put on through legislation. AB 144 is a really big deal. It's like Denise said, there's the 1986 Act federally, which gave immunity protections. And thank God we have RFK Jr. in there because he burns for justice for our children and humanity, and he knows exactly all the plays that they have. He knows how to untangle this thing. I hope everyone needs to free him up and let him untangle the corporate control and actually make America healthy again. But as far as Newsom, he knows exactly what he's doing. With AB 144, he has now made a new form of immunity. It goes into effect in January in California to shield these private nonprofits. This has never been done before from any lawsuits for any harm caused from vaccine clinics. And this is a real big play because, like Denise said, this is where the lawsuits have been at because we couldn't get at the lawsuits on the COVID shots because they were given immunity. And so they were going after the violation at the school levels where they went against informed consent of the parents and gave kids the shot. And Newsom just gave them a clean slate. This is a really big deal.
Yeah, that is unreal. And when I go into a CVS or a Walgreens and I see people getting the COVID shot, wearing 3 masks, I think to myself, how sad that must be. And I almost pity them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in a weird way, I worry about their families, their children. Are they pushing this vaccine religion on others? Have you ever found anything successful at getting through to people who might be of sound mind but simply haven't had access to the type of information you've had access to?
I think we've had a lot of conversations with people who even recently are starting to see the move of the pharmaceutical companies. What people are now starting to realize is that there's so much money that's pushed between the pharmaceutical industries and our elected representatives.
So much.
I mean, it's incredible. And so when we have these conversations we work with all kinds of different groups, Democrat, Republican, I mean, it doesn't matter. We want to have those conversations with people because we do have those conversations that are like, yeah, I was like, double boosted and I used to wear a mask and now I see what's going on. So people are paying attention. COVID really changed the whole dynamic of how people thought about vaccines.
I think there are people who are vaccine injured who don't even know that they're vaccine injured.
Yes.
And they have blood clots or myocarditis or some other presentation of a side effect. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't even register that is something that really has followed a lot of this excessive vaccine taking that we've seen following COVID. The way that this dovetails with the broader parental rights movement is something I want to explore because we saw in Loudoun County, Virginia, it was a lot of the critical race theory, in some places the radical gender ideology. Like, help our viewers understand the confluence of this parents' rights movement and how these things work together.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you when we train people at the California Capitol, we'll bring in the grassroots. We have district to capital networks, and we welcome people to come with us. And one of the things that we say when we take them into the office is that offices of the legislators is don't put anyone in here in a box. We are here to protect children, families, and freedom, and we are going to defend them and fight you in any place that we need to. And that's where you can see issues like the critical race theory or the transgender issue or the grooming and the sexualization of children. That comes into play in that avenue. So, or, whether it's where there's everything on the table at California. We'll fight 10 different bills in a year because they're all tied together. If you're fighting to protect kids, families, and freedom, then you have to fight all of them. And so we've been very active over the last few years. We've been also working to get the men out of the women's prisons. And we have
There's so many. We just learned this at a activist function we were at recently. There are thousands of men in women's prison and California, and they're getting a lot of the women in those prisons pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They have Plan B pills. They've had pregnancies and lost babies. And, the worst thing about it all, and I'm going to say this, is that the legislators all know about it now, and they want to fix it. But the leadership, which is Gavin Newsom, and people like Mike McGuire, Senate President, who's also trying to get one of those gerrymandered congressional seats, they have blocked even their Democrat counterparts in the legislature from actually getting the men out of the women's prisons because for 2 years now, they have blocked what we could easily pass.
This is the frontier. The frontiers of equality now is like having to sit by as men in women's prisons rape the women.
Yep.
Like that's the frontiers of equality, and it's nuts. I worry about the effects of this on humanity, on the vaccine. I feel like for a lot of our lives, in the United States in particular, humanity has been subjected to a biological war waged against us. And part of it's the vaccines, part of it is the chemical exposure that we have. There are real environmental concerns that we as an America First movement ought to take a strong look at. But do you worry about your children and who they're going to meet, and are they going to have the opportunity for big families when we've had to endure all this?
I worry about that every single day. I have one homeschool kid and I have one kid in public school. I worry every day about my kid in public school because he's captured. He's captured between the teachers who are teaching him, banned books, which include how to get on apps like Grindr and how to upload your picture. These books actually tell children how to meet strangers online. Between the social media, the schools, the policies, and the legislation, they have put in such a wedge between parents and children. It's really awful to experience, especially if you have an extra vulnerable child like I do. My son, who I homeschool, we have a whole different world. He doesn't even understand what's going on in public school. He understands legislation because he goes to the Capitol with us. But we're building out the world we want for our children. And that means we homeschool. That means that we have the group of friends that we really do want to bring into our lives that we trust. That means that my son understands civics. He's 11 and he knows.
What would you say if he brought home a vaxxed girlfriend?
He would never. He wouldn't. This is actually a conversation he has with me. He's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to find a wife if they've been vaccinated with the COVID shot? Because he knows that shot was just so detrimental to people. We were so lied to about that. People were so brainwashed to think that this shot was healthy and it was safe and it was effective. And they used isolation. They use fear. This is what they do in prison. They isolate you until you comply. And so when they did that out here, people just thought it was, a regular medical procedure. Then they didn't think they were lied to. My son, who's 11, knows everything about this movement, about this shot, because it's our responsibility as parents to introduce them to these things. So that way they're ready for when they're older, because the policies that get introduced now, they don't affect me. They're going to affect him and they're going to affect his children. So he's very much worried about being able to find a wife that is not vaccinated.
Is that going to be like a new dating thing for the Zoomers?
It should
you have
be.
to ask your first date?
Everyone should be really concerned about the mRNA platform technology. This is something that humanity needs to worry about. Traditional vaccines also have their problems. They have risks, they have toxins, they alter the immune system. But we've got two different and difficult situations with both of them. And the mRNA this is part of the transhumanist agenda to alter your genetic code, to cut, man from God. And it was actually I actually had a conversation with a well-known transhumanist the week before we started Freedom Angels, and it was him in 2019 telling me that everything was about to change. And he told me essentially everything about mRNA platform technology and AI, using AI to advance this, that caused me to be like, we have got to go faster and harder. And that's when we started civil disobedience. I think the most important convos we can have is with our kids is to let them know the truth of the world, and with each other. Like you said, there's people out there that don't realize they're injured. So the more, like, do not allow yourself to be silenced or shamed. Have the conversations. Just keep having honest, gentle conversations with everyone you know. I don't spend time fighting on social media. Just have it in real life. Like, take stuff into the real world, on the ground. That's how we build the world we want, from the ground up. We're also really big proponents of food freedom, whether it's clean food, but also local food, like supporting the farmers and ranchers. One of the things that I'm most excited about right now is last week, Trump, Brooke Rollins, Bobby, they met with a couple of ranchers. I know one of them from Nevada, another one, and these guys are the real deal. These are the producers on the ground that aren't supporting mRNA, that want, country of origin. They want to have local control of food because they know that not only is our health critical on that issue, but also the control of humanity. So it was one of the best things I saw. Actually, one of the most exciting things that's happening right now is that Trump, Brooke Rollins, Bobby Kennedy, they're meeting with the actual ranchers, not the big lobby for cattle. They're meeting with the right people, and if they follow those plans, then humanity has one of the greatest hopes that we could have, is that we got the right people moving the right strategy for it. So I'm excited about that.
It's kind of the one thing Europe has right. They appreciate eating local. They have that labeling, the transparency, and people can eat pizza in Italy all the time and not gain weight because it's a pure ingredient structure. It's simpler, and you don't have all the stabilizers that I think have really hurt our country that we're allowed in. And there's a part of Kennedy's strategy that I like, which is that it is not reliant on passing legislation. Yeah. He gets these stakeholders in a room and says, well, would you like to take these dyes out of your food, or do you want me to pursue a regulatory path? Would you like to voluntarily agree to not have these mandates, or do you want to see the force and power of the federal government? And he's getting some of these corporate entities to do the right thing when all other options have been exhausted. You have a really interesting domino theory about California, because we'll have viewers around the country who will watch this program and say, these are wonderful moms, they're inspiring in their activism, but what are they still doing in California? Don't they understand that this place has lost ground in the invasion? You were a red state, Reagan, Nixon, Pete Wilson was elected statewide here. And then you did open borders and amnesty. You allowed yourself to be invaded. You have no real control over the voting, which means that you are susceptible to legal votes being diluted. And you really ought to pack up and go to Nevada or Florida or Texas and enjoy low taxes and friendly folks. What are you still doing here?
Oh, yeah. We always say, don't tell us to leave California. It's our terrain strategy. We're like, look, we have to stay and fight, not only because California is ground zero, but if we save California, then we save the nation, and we save the nation, we save Western civilization. But also because you've got to fight the ground that you're on. We're in a global battle. There's no one that is immune from this. Whether you're in the reddest county in the reddest state or in deep blue California, you're fighting the same evil agenda. It's just easier. You're on better terrain in a deep red, deep county or state to be able to work from the ground up locally, your school boards, your city councils, your county level, and then the state and federal, from there to lock in protections for kids, family, and freedom. It's harder here in California, but we have had victories that nobody even knows about. We defeated Merck in the California in 2023. They tried to mandate the HPV shot for all kids K through 12 and college without exemption. And we were able, through the grassroots action of Californians across the state in our district to capital networks, to force them to remove that part of the mandate. That is a holy grail for Merck. That's $1 billion a year because it's a captured market, almost 1/10 of the U.S. population with no way out. And you're compelled to go to school. It's compulsory education, and then also for college, it's not. You would have it as well. So you can actually win even on bad ground. And one of the things I say is Californians get a bad rap deservedly for some things, but it's really just the extremists who run California, like Gavin Newsom, like these guys that want to take those congressional seats that they're trying to gerrymander with Prop 50. Real Californians, when you tell them, when they start to actually pay attention to civics and see what's going on, they're all on the same side. We all want the same things. And if you are out in any other state, and you definitely don't want the Californians that are there voting blue no matter who, but you find the refugees from California that have fought, because when you've been against the wall, no one fights harder. You find them, those are your riders, and they will help you turn your red states like more red and lock in protections.
It is true that when you find the deep blue state and deep blue jurisdiction Republicans, there is a special way that fire burns. I've seen it in New York. I've seen it in Illinois. I've seen it in California, where you've been called every name under the book. Yeah. You have faced evil. You have faced ostracizing features of shunning from the left and even kind of polite society at times. But if you were to have that type of transformation in Florida, what's the type of leader who could do it, Denise? Like, what's the archetype of somebody that could save California?
Gosh, I think people who engage the way that we engage. We've made this our life to really understand politics and to be engaged at a local level. Everyone wants to flip California red, but that's not really realistic. What we can do is engage locally. One of the things that we train.
So I'm sorry, just to draw a fine point on it. Your strategy isn't just to be going for the moonshot, but let's go win a city council seat here. Let's go win a school board seat here. Let's find a state legislative seat to flip.
That's how you change your terrain.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's more tactical.
Yes, you have to be. We learned this during COVID with the lockdowns, right? Gavin Newsom created these recommendations for counties to close down, to shut down. You have to stay in your house. You have to close your business. We actually worked with different counties and different districts in California that lifted their public health emergency because we were working locally, like Atwater. We worked with their sheriff. We worked with their city council members, with their public health officer. That's how we change things. We're not going to flip the whole state. So when we want people who are in leadership positions, either at a grassroots level or just a mom or a dad who are like, I want to get involved in politics, we need to start focus on the city council, the school boards, because they're the ones who are making decisions for your kids. We focus on the county board of supervisors because they're the ones who are making these decisions for the entire district. We passed in San Joaquin County, we passed resolutions that were no QR codes required to show your COVID vaccine. San Joaquin County, that's where I'm from, was red. And it for Trump election was 40%, and Californians voted for Trump. San Joaquin County flipped red for him. What we can do at a local level is really change the entire terrain of where we live. And
it's such a good battle plan for our listeners that maybe are in a place where they don't feel like they could have a perfect candidate as their senator or congressman, but they could go find that opportunity where, with the right neighbors, with that in real life contact that Tara was talking about, you could do it. It's really a good activism plan. I do want to get to this election that we have coming up in California. I'm worried. I'm worried because I think a lot of Republicans are really happy with what President Trump is doing. They feel like there's more economic optimism. They don't really think the Congress is that important anyway. They haven't really done much other than, a few things to facilitate Trump getting the country saved with a secure border and deregulation and productive investment. But they're fired up. Our side might be a little pacified. And if they win this thing and just wipe 5 Republican seats off the map, the bad actions in California are going to have such a direct impact on the rest of the country. With all due respect, a boy playing in girls' sports in California doesn't necessarily impact you in Texas or Florida, But if you've got Hakeem Jeffries, Jamie Raskin, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, her nails, all in power, it will be torment for the Trump administration. Do you have any hope that Republicans are going to improve on the voter turnout, or do you think we're all just kind of too happy and surfing in California right now?
No, I think the problem with Republicans is that because Trump won, we're all real lazy, right? It's like, oh,
winning will do that.
Yes, people become very lazy and just not, it's like herding cats, trying to get people engaged. We have a messed up system in California. We have an awful election integrity. We don't have any election integrity in California. And Republicans do not want to vote early. They don't want to vote by mail. Unfortunately, this is the system we have right now. And so voting day of, we want voter ID, we want day of, we want paper ballots. Eventually, hopefully, we get this with the proper leadership. I hope Republicans get off of their couch, stop being so lazy. That's what it really is. Like, I'm just not going to vote on this. Voting doesn't matter. I hear that all the time. It doesn't matter. Well, if you don't, we're going to have Richard Pan, we're going to have Scott Wiener, we're going to have Robert Rivas, we're going to have Mike McGuire. All of these awful extremists are going to be in Congress. Oh. And it is going to be the hardest thing to have to deal with on a national level.
I mean, yeah, I think also animating the laziness is that this is about process. Like, when you're going to vote for or against a policy, that can maybe activate you more than voting for or against a map. Are you seeing that when you talk to people, Tara?
Well, I think the hardest thing is that people either don't know what's going on. Special elections are notoriously difficult, so they don't even know civically what's going on. They don't know there's one happening. And then the other part is people are also giving up hope. Oh, it's hopeless because we don't have election integrity in California. We do have a ballot initiative for voter ID that should get qualified by the spring.
Great.
It will be on, it's critical. It'll be on in November 2026 for people to vote on. I have no doubt that we'll pass that, and that's
it's a
huge
key
step.
stepping stone.
Critical.
Yeah.
And, it's really critical, and that's going to help candidates up and down ballot, for the turnout, because people are going to be moved to be out on that. But we need them out now, because the biggest problem, like Denise said, we're going to have these, no one even understands how bad it is. There'll be almost no Republican representation from California of the 52. There'll only be like 7 or 8% represented for the Republicans in Congress. They're also going to be the worst of the worst from California being sent there. But it also is, it perpetuates the lie. What Gavin Newsom and his crew are spreading about Prop 50 is a complete lie. It's gaslighting to the extreme. And we should all be defending against their attack on the Republic. If we don't have integrity in voting, and we have Gavin Newsom out there telling everybody one thing and they're believing it, and he's spending he spent $300 million of taxpayer dollars to put this on the ballot. And then he's got the Teachers Association, he's got Soros, he's got tens of millions coming in from all sorts of sources to lie to the people that they have to save California from Trump and protect democracy, when it's the absolute opposite. We are stealing the voices of Californians, but with Prop 50, and we are putting the most extremists that do not represent any of the people in California into the position to be at Congress. This is the absolute wrong direction for California. And I just hope that the lawsuits, I hope that the Supreme Court cases out of Louisiana that say you're not supposed to racial redistrict, that we aren't going to parse and gerrymander, that what we should be doing is only geographical districting, that sets the stage. Because if this thing passes due to Newsom having the microphone and able to gaslight everybody, and the fact that people don't engage in politics overall, and I'll also add, the Democrats have the infrastructure. They know how to use the early voting, the mail-in ballots. They know how to use the problems with the system to their advantage. And so this is why we've been advocating so hard. Get out, put your vote in early, do it through the mail. It's now, in-person voting is now open in most counties. There's a few counties, like a lot of rural counties like mine, we actually don't even have in-person voting. We just have, on the day of November 4th, you can go in and do a ballot drop box. So that means every answer is vote early. And then I think people need to really know that you have to track your ballot. and you have to fix it if there's a problem. In November 2024, 33,000 ballots were never counted because they didn't get postmarked in time. So if you go to postmark on the final day, the post office does not have to postmark it. So you don't drop your ballot in a post office without it being hand stamped for the date on the last day. And if you don't cure your ballot, fix any problems, we could win or lose a tight margin on that.
Wow. That is so foreign to me as a Florida man, because it's sort of like, you know, if you can't get the ballot right when you vote it, maybe we don't really need your vote that bad anyway. Like if you couldn't figure out those things. But I know it is critically important, the curing process. And we're obviously going through this because Gavin Newsom wants to be president more than any living human. Mm-hmm. What would you tell the rest of the country about Gavin Newsom that you think they might not know if they hadn't lived here under his rule and only saw him as a television figure?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can say that on air, but he's a terrible person. Gavin Newsom has created California as a sanctuary state to sterilize and mutilate children. He has created this state to where parents no longer have the ability to make decisions, educational decisions, medical decisions for their children. Laws like SB 107 that allows children to come here from all over the country to get what they're calling gender affirming care. And if a parent does not agree, the courts can take their children away. So that
is the wildest idea for a law I have ever heard.
Yeah.
That the school nurse recommending gender blockers has the ability to stand in the way of your parental rights, mm-hmm. potentially. That is so wild.
Personally, I feel like Gavin Newsom hates us. I feel like he is using us as a stepping stone for his political aspirations, and he doesn't care who he steps on. And I say this because I know the policies that he's put forward. We have been involved for almost a decade in the policies for California. And if you look at us here, we are the highest in homelessness. There's $24 billion missing within the homeless industrial complex through nonprofits under Gavin Newsom.
It's just a grift.
It totally is. Nobody's getting the help they need.
They have to keep homelessness as a problem so that they can keep the money flowing.
Yeah, it's all the money funneling. So we have a beautiful state. California is a gorgeous state. Our families are suffering. They can't even put food on the table, gas in the car. They're worried about sending their children to public school.
Jeez.
These kids are graduating illiterate because the standard for graduating children has been lowered so much. We have a huge problem in leadership here, and it falls on the hands of Gavin Newsom. Not only just the fires that he failed to protect people from, but just the policies that are so dangerous that families who do know them, and people don't really know about what's been passed in California. Nobody's engaged in politics, right? We're all just trying to put food on the table and go around.
Well, there's no real opposition. It's not like you get these great legislative debates. The Democrats have super majorities. They never have to compromise. Yeah. And so they just steamroll you here. And I think you make a really good observation that Gavin Newsom has ambition that is even willing to let him do harm to his own people to service that. And I'm wondering, I mean, do you think anything gets in the way of Democrats nominating him?
Right now, it looks like he's the nominee. I mean, I think it's on every one of us in California to let the world know what it's like here. Yeah. I mean, it is true. It is hard to put food on the table. People are struggling to pay the bills. He's about to rate hike utilities again.
Insurance.
And insurance, yeah. The California Fair Plan is about to go up. They say average 38%, could go up 300% for those in high-risk areas.
Oh, no, definitely when you don't have working fire hydrants, the insurance going up is a downstream effect of that because the insurance companies have to price in the risk of government incompetence.
Yeah, he's the master gaslighter and deflector, though. People should know that. He's slick, but he is a gaslighter. And, he's just gone viral for, his about Wonder Bread, his little, on the podcast talking about Wonder Bread. Well, first of all, for anyone not, too old to remember or not young enough to know, we all ate Wonder Bread in the 70s and 80s. But he's actually now forcing Californians into that poverty level. Like we're all, most everyone, not Gavin and his cronies or his NGOs and his unions, union leaders, not the union members, but the rest of California.
No, they're eating French laundry.
100%.
Gavin Newsom wasn't busted eating Wonder Bread. He was busted eating at French Laundry while everyone else was locked in their home. Well, I think this has been a really important conversation because you've done two things for our viewers. One, you have laid out the warning. You've shown that it is control, it is an evil globalist empire, and it is personal evil that allows that to advance. But I think even more important than that warning, your story is a story of how our coalition can grow. A person who is committed to left-leaning causes and social justice, a person who did not have the initial first best step in life, and yet for the sake of your children, for the sake of your families, for the sake of your state and your country, you're now the Freedom Angels. You go all over the state, you inspire candidates, you train activists, you give people valuable information. And I just remember being a younger guy and being told over and over again that this movement of ours was going to shrink, constrain, that as the world became less white, as the world became more enlightened, as women were voting more and becoming professionals at a higher rate, that there just wasn't really a future for the Republican Party. But this is the future. Getting people informed, getting people engaged, and getting them to care enough about their own health and the future of their family and their children to do something about it. And it's an incredible thing, and I'm really glad you do it. How can folks continue to follow your work, and if they want to be a more useful version of themselves as a citizen, what would you suggest?
So we are always going up and down California, holding town halls and training people on how to be effective and how to engage at our district to capital networks. They can go to freedom-angels.org and they can look at all of the resolutions that we've written and passed across the country and sign up with us. So that way, when legislative session starts in 2026, we're ready to rock and roll and to push back on the kind of detrimental policies that we already know are going to be introduced.
The Freedom Angels are ready for you to ride with them. Freedom-angels.org. Is that?
Yep.
Freedom-angels.org. And before we go, are you ready for flu season or just hoping for the best? Don't get caught off guard. Make sure you're prepared with All Family Pharmacy. Their process is simple and straightforward. A licensed doctor reviews every order. The prescription is included. Unlike the big chain pharmacies that only push the flu shot, All Family Pharmacy believes in medical freedom and gives you real options. You pick the medicines you know work for you. Now is the time to stock your cabinet. They have everything you need. Tamiflu for flu treatment and prevention, antibiotics, antivirals, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, immune support, more than 200 medications to choose from. It's my go-to for prescription medications and supplements right to my door. Fast, and if you need stuff right away, overnight is also available. So be proactive. Prepare now. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Matt. Use code MATT10 to save 10%. Again, that's allfamilypharmacy.com. Code MATT10. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with Anchormen. Make sure to check out the Freedom Angels.
Want to see more great videos like this? Click on the link below to subscribe to OAN Live and watch Dan Ball's Real America and The Matt Gaetz Show on Dish Channel 212. Tune in, subscribe, and watch today.